listening to Heroes Forge, a Heroes of the Storm podcast.
Forgers, what is up? Welcome to episode 26 of Heroes Forge, a community-driven podcast all about Heroes of the Storm. This is your show host, Jeff Reynolds, and my partner in forging crime, as always, is the amazing Kristen Ashton. Hello, Kristen. How are you?
Doing great, as always. Jeff, how are you today?
I am so excited and stoked. This week, we're joined by the outstanding Blizzard podcaster who takes time to inform the community all about Blizzard gaming podcasts out there. A huge, and I mean huge, Heroes Forge welcome to Rho from the hit podcast Realm Maintenance. What is up, Rho?
Hey, what's up? Thank you guys for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure. Sorry I'm not on camera for this, but it looks like my little Voidwalker avatar blends in with the background just nicely.
Oh, it fits perfectly with the background. No worries about the camera. Most of our audience is audio listeners, so it's going to be just perfect, and I am so excited for this. Rho, why don't you give us a little background on your history with video games? When did you start gaming, and what are some of your favorites?
Well, I'm kind of an old guy, even though my voice sounds a little bit young. I'm 40 years old. I was playing video games back in the days of the Atari 2600, so you had stuff like Pac-Man, Asteroids, Space Invaders, and eventually Galaga and Galaxian and all that cool 80s video game stuff. But my real love for gaming didn't really grow until, I'd say, the early 90s. And you had games like the first Diablo game and, of course, the early Warcraft series. And that was my early exposure to Blizzard games. But for the most part, in general, during that time, I found myself gravitating towards role-playing games. So I was a fan of the Ultima series. I was a fan of the Final Fantasy series. And even like old school Commodore games like back in the 80s, like a Bard's Tale and stuff like that. So I was really mainly a role-playing game kind of guy, shied away from sports games and stuff like that. And role-playing games would lead into a love for massively multiplayer online role-playing games, and thus the journey into worlds like Final Fantasy Online, World of Warcraft, Ultima Online, and many more.
Yeah, very, very cool. So is WoW your number one Blizzard game? If you had to pick one, your favorite Blizzard game, would it be World of Warcraft?
I'd have to say it has to be, even if it's not the case right now, because like at this precise moment, I'm not subbed to WoW, but I'm going to be resubbing in a few weeks with Legion approaching.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. If it weren't for World of Warcraft, a lot of things would not exist in and around my life, including what I do on Realm Maintenance. So I owe a lot to what happened with World of Warcraft and just my love for the game since the time I joined all the way back in like mid-Burning Crusade. And I've played from mid-Burning Crusade all the way up until just about a month or two ago. I've taken a break from WoW mainly to focus on, for one thing, other Blizzard games. I've been deep into Overwatch, Hearthstone, and of course Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah, and you take a lot of time with your podcast. I mean, your podcast is outstanding. I mean, I can't say enough positive things about it and what it does for the actual Blizzard podcasting community. Why don't you give everyone a little bit of rundown on what Realm Maintenance is and what you do on a week-to-week basis?
Sure. So there are a lot of podcasts out there that cover all the Blizzard games. And while it just started with me covering podcasts for World of Warcraft, over the almost now 4 years that I've done this podcast, Realm Maintenance is a podcast that talks about other podcasts. Imagine if you have cable television and you've ever wandered through your channel surfing and you stumbled upon to the TV Guide channel. I'm almost kind of like that. I'm a show that includes interviews with podcasters for these other shows. I'll ask them a little bit about what they do on their podcast, probably talk a little shop about the game they cover and so on, and give people a little more insight and kind of a sneak preview into the personalities and such like that, and to let my listeners know if this is a podcast that they might want to check out. And along with that, I'll throw in a little news about what's happening on podcasts around there. If there's a certain podcast that's like interviewing a developer or someone well known in the community for that game, I'll try to point that out. And a couple of times I've brought up this podcast as well. And I try to cover everybody. It's not just about the big podcasts. I don't talk just about The Instance and The Angry Chicken, although I mention them quite a bit. I like making sure that people know about not just the big shows, but the small shows out there, because there are a lot of smaller shows out there that are doing some very special things.
Yeah, and that is amazing. And I mean, Kristen, we had the opportunity to be on Realm Maintenance, and it was awesome.
It really was. It was probably the highlight of this first part of the year for me. That was amazing. And Bro, we can't thank you enough for that. That was so much fun.
I can't thank you for giving me the chance to audition, which eventually led to me appearing here this week.
Oh, there was no audition needed. I mean, you're a huge name in the Blizzard universe. So thank you for all of that. And we are so excited to be. I mean, there was so much to talk about in the Heroes of the Storm community. And so that's why there are so many podcasts about it. So many podcasts about all of these other Blizzard games as well. And I mean, the next thing, we're always looking at the next thing, right, Kristen? So what is the next hero going to be for Heroes of the Storm? And I can't help but think that it's Gul'dan.
It's got to be. He was the eyes at the end of the Medivh preview, the storm that was coming. So I can't think of another hero who would be next. And most people really want to see Gul'dan in the Nexus, and he was a big part of the WoW movie. So it makes sense that they would have been working on him behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the WoW movie, because I thought he was awesome in the WoW movie. I mean, there were some ups and downs to that film in my personal opinion, but I thought Gul'dan was awesome. Rho, I know you've talked a lot about the WoW movie. What do you think? I mean, do you think Gul'dan is something that might be coming to Heroes sooner than later?
Oh, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And I think the answer to that is pretty much shortly before the launch of Legion. I see the arrival of Gul'dan in the Nexus as just one of many steps leading to the launch of Legion and WoW. And the fact that you have Medivh then teasing into Gul'dan, it just feels natural. Now, do I think that Gul'dan's going to be the absolute next hero in the Nexus? I mean, there's a fair decent possibility of that, considering the way he was teased in Medivh's trailer, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they throw us a curveball and wait just a few more weeks if they give us a different hero and then Gul'dan, because that would put Gul'dan's timing like right about the launch of Legion. So if it's not the next hero, it's going to be the one after.
Oh, they're teasing us with Gul'dan, because that is a huge fan favorite. I mean, we've even played around with forging Gul'dan on the show. Now that it's so close to him possibly coming out, maybe we'll hold off just to see what Blizzard can come up with. I mean, how are they going to do the whole warlock thing? And we've forged a few warlocks on the show, and we have some ideas, but I know they're going to hit the nail on the head. I hope that everything is, living up to everyone's expectations, and I cannot wait. And Kristen, I see a note here. You finished Fatal Frame on your stream?
7.5 hours later, Fatal Frame 3 is officially done. And let me tell you, this boss fight last night was epic. We had a great audience for it. And so there's a pre-boss fight, and then there's a boss fight. So the pre-boss fight, dying. Eventually take them out, save point, onto the boss. And I asked everyone how many times they thought I was going to die with this. And it ranged from 7 to 14,500,000. But one lunatic in a hat guessed correctly. He guessed 8 times. So death 7 comes around, and I finally learned what I need to do to beat this ghost. And I'm raging because my death at death 6, I believe, we had her. She was almost dead, but there's a part in this boss fight where you're surrounded by darkness, and you only can see this small area around you. And she'll come out from the shadow, and if she touches you, insta-kill, you have to start over. And she did, and I'd been doing so well. So things got serious. Did a few push-ups to kind of get the energy out.
Only you.
Took the glasses off, took the jacket off.
Did you turn on the Survivor and play Eye of the Tiger?
Sadly, no, but I should have done that. But yeah, and got her at 8.
Great. That's an epic story by itself. You don't even need a video game story behind it. I mean, I can hear the Rocky music playing and the big hanging things of frozen meat that you're punching to get the last thing. I mean, it was great. Great story.
And that at the end of it all, she was saying, Adrian!
Yeah. Standing on top of some digital stairs in a digital Philadelphia. Adrian!
The sweater on, hood up, drinking the raw eggs.
That's right. Oh, I'm glad you beat it. That's so cool for all the people that got to tune in and guess how many times. I mean, that's the fun of live streaming. That's why we watch Twitch. That's why we go and we get to watch all these great shows and all these great streamers like you, Kristen, just to have fun. I mean, I've watched your show tons of times and sometimes I leave crying. I'm laughing so hard. It is so fun. So if you're out there, check out Kristen's streams. They are great. Speaking of great, I cannot wait to get into this episode, so I think we need to forge. Let's forge.
Let's forge.
Rho, since you are our special guest on the show tonight, we let you pick which hero we will be forging for the Nexus. If this is your first time listening to the show, what we do is we pick a hero from the Blizzard universe and we imagine what that character would be like if it was brought into Heroes of the Storm. We all build a kit, so all three of us have put together a kit and we're kind of just bantering back and forth, talking about all the cool abilities that this hero might have if they were implemented into the game. And this hero... this character would be an amazing hero. Rho, tell us, who are we forging this week?
This week, we are forging Lei Shen, the Thunder King.
Lei Shen, the Thunder King, and I can tell you what, when you were talking about your history with World of Warcraft, and I was thinking about mine too, and playing through Vanilla and playing through BC, and then kind of losing track after that, I wish that I had played through. This is Mists of Pandaria, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I wish that I had...
He was the main boss in the second raid tier of Mists of Pandaria.
Oh, just an outstanding fight. I've watched it 100 times. Rose sent us a little audio clip that gives us a little insight on Lei Shen. Let's listen to it now.
Tyrant, Dictator, Conqueror, Emperor. These titles of the Thunder King were earned by bringing absolute misery to every race in Pandaria.
All nations tremble before me.
Resurrected into a world where his people no longer rule, Lei Shen is bent on ending the farce and bringing the land under his heel once more.
You are nothing. I wield the power of the heavens.
Too cool. I mean, just that voice
memories.
Is so booming, and I bet all the memories come flooding back. And he's got such a great backstory too. I mean, I cannot believe I missed this. Kristen, fill us in a little bit more on Lei Shen's place in the World of Warcraft universe.
Will do. Lei Shen was not an ambitious child, merely one of the thousands born to the countless warlords vying for power in Pandaria. Eventually, his father met his death, but instead of swearing vengeance on the way of things at the time, Lei Shen took to exile, wandering his once great home. In time, he grew strong, but unlike those around him, sought more than a legacy devoted to mere conquering. Lei Shen believed in a future where his people would become great like they were in the days now legend. He sought out Ra, found the High Keeper sullen, and discovered the death of the Pantheon. Instead of breaking like the powerful being in front of him, Lei Shen, head held high, took on the mantle of the Titans, for if they could no longer speak, he would speak for them. Imbued now with the power of Aman'Thul and Raden, Lei Shen conquered the world of Pandaria, uniting his Mogu in a way that had never been done before. Merciless in his tactics, the Thunder King saw to his purpose, defying even an august celestial. Death came, and with it, a forged pact with the Zandalari trolls for resurrection. Once again back and bent on complete domination, it was a group of adventurers that saw to his second death, one he might never return from, his heart eaten by Wrathion, and his power now in the hands of Jaina Proudmoore.
Oh, what a great story. I mean, oh, it's so good. I love your little writing there. We said he might be gone, because as we see, I mean, even in his backstory, he comes back, right?
Yeah, let's not underestimate Blizzard and them resurrecting characters, and Jaina being a bit off center now. Right,
you never know, right, Rho?
Absolutely. Never underestimate a baddie with the power of the Titans practically within him.
Yeah, it's a crazy fight. I mean, like I said before, I watched probably close to 10 different fights, 10 different, the heroic I watched a few times, and I watched the version with the 10-man normal, and I watched the Fat Boss guide to it, and it's just a really cool battle. And Rho, if you don't mind, can you give us like a quick synopsis on what happens in this raid battle?
Sure. So Lei Shen is at the end of the Throne of Thunder raid, and when you get to him, it's in this large square arena. And the arena is basically divided into 4 quadrants. Each quadrant has this pillar in the corner. And Lei Shen's power comes from basically, the heart of Raden and everything like that. And what he does is at different points, he empowers one of the pillars, basically whichever one he's closest to. And depending on what pillar he empowers, he gains different kinds of abilities. And these abilities are all basically lightning based. And some abilities require your raid to group up and stay together to split damage that's coming in, while other abilities require your raid to spread apart. So Lei Shen kind of has this interesting push and pull going on where your raid's doing a little bit of a dance, while also at the same time trying to kill all these lightning ads that are spawning throughout the course of the fight. And during the intermissions and the phases, things get really crazy as effects from multiple pillars are going on at the same time. Then near the end, you have gusts of wind blowing across the arena. I mean, it is just 10 minutes of sheer chaos.
Yeah, and those 10 minutes of sheer chaos make for the best raids, in my opinion. I know when you've got everybody and they gotta run to group and they gotta run to separate and one person's gotta run really far away and not get blown off the edge. And if they do,
you
everybody
gotta put your left foot in, you gotta put your left foot out. It's crazy.
Absolutely, Kristen. Don't you agree? I mean, the little raiding that I got to do, I felt it was so cool when those kind of things happened.
Oh, totally. And I mean, if you're a master of the hokey pokey, like Rho pointed out, you got no problem doing the dance.
You got no strings to hold you down if you're a master of the hokey pokey and all these cheesy sayings. I love it. Cool. Let's get on to the forging. The first thing we're going to chat about is we're going to chat about the role classification that we think Lei Shen would be if he was brought into the Nexus. I'll go first, and I'm going to say I thought he would be an assassin, believe it or not.
Nice.
Ooh.
What were you thinking, Kristen?
Oh, I was thinking warrior.
Ooh, an assassin and a warrior. And Rho, what were you thinking?
Well, if you guys listened to the episode in which I talked to these two on realm maintenance, I was saying that initially I thought that Lei Shen would be a warrior. However, over the course of these couple of weeks where I've been preparing for this episode, I've been thinking about the kit and the build and his abilities and realized that Lei Shen is actually, in my opinion, a specialist that feels a little bit like a warrior. So I'd say I'd call him like a warrior specialist hybrid, but for the sake of placing him in the game, I'd call him a specialist.
Wow.
Jeez, 3 different choices.
3 really good. I mean, this is going to be really fun. We never really get 3 different choices, so I am so stoked to hear all these abilities. Let's start with Kristen. Let's start with that warrior trait. What do you think Lei Shen as a warrior, what would his trait be?
I'm going with lightning conduits. And depending on what area of the map Lei Shen is on, he will have access to one of 4 E abilities.
No way. So these conduits are going to be placed on every map in certain locations, you're thinking?
I'm thinking they aren't visible. It's just imaginary lines that are drawn.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't want the team to work too hard to make this happen.
Right.
But, imaginary quadrants, north, south, east, west.
Oh, I get it. So you're talking about actually like splitting it like a pizza, the whole thing. Not necessarily each lane is a different ability, but the upper left portion, the upper right portion.
Correct. Very much like the battlefield that he was on during the raid.
Oh, I get it. That's going to be cool. And I guess you're going to tell us those abilities when we get to the E's.
Oh, yeah. But one thing at a time. One thing at a time.
I gotta slow down the Lei Shen warrior. I need to know, though. I need to know. All right, Rho, what were you thinking for the specialist trait on Lei Shen's end?
Well, you see, Jeff, I'm thinking for the specialist trait, Lei Shen has a trait called Lightning Conduit. Now you're thinking, what? Wait a minute here. Am I going to duplicate the exact same thing that Kristen said? And I'm going to say no. Because this is actually the problem that was that I was dealing with. It's like, okay, I really want to have the whole charging, empowering thing that does with the pillars in the raid fight. Because that's what Lei Shen is very famous for. But I thought, what if we do something really crazy and different with this? There are 4 pillars in the raid fight. But what else is there 4 of in Heroes of the Storm? There are 4 roles. So, for my Lightning Conduit, Lei Shen grants a bonus to the last target of his charge ability, which I'll get to in a little bit, and the bonus is based on the target's role. Lei Shen's W ability also changes based on the role of the last target he charged. So, this is what makes him a specialist in that his abilities and the bonuses he provides depend directly upon the role of whoever he is currently empowering. So his teammates are basically the pillars.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Oh, that is so awesome. I don't even want to say my idea right now. I mean, that is such a great... Oh, man, that's so out of the box thinking. And so, I mean, first off, you were totally right about the pillars. I mean, Kristen, did you see that when you were watching all of these videos of Lei Shen? I mean, the pillars are like 90% of the fight. I mean, working around them and playing with them as you're attacking him.
Oh, yeah, visually, definitely. And I'm curious, Rho, now, when he's empowered based on his previous target, on the screen, will everyone see what type of empowerment he has?
Yes, so the way there would be a visual call out for that. Now, if you've looked at the fight for the Thunder King fight, you'll notice that like each quadrant has this kind of circular tile with a different icon into it. I do feel that it's important to have a visual call out so that other players on not only his teammates but the opposing team knows, okay, he's currently empowering a warrior, we need to be prepared for this possible ability, or he's currently empowering a support, we need to be prepared for this possible ability. So yes, there's definitely a visual call out, and that icon would basically be floating above Lei Shen's head and above the head of the person he's empowering. So that's a little bit of a drawback in that you're providing information that way. One thing I should go over really quick, since this is kind of baked into the trait, like I said, whoever Lei Shen is going to be empowering gets a bonus. Really quickly, if he is empowering a warrior charged by Lei Shen deals damage within melee range, so it's kind of like an AoE, a low-powered AoE thing, kind of like lightning armor, basically. An assassin charged by Lei Shen gains a small bonus of attack speed. Again, this isn't super significant, it's just a little extra boost. This bonus is just as kind of a small side thing. A support charged by Lei Shen gains X% mana regeneration or resource regeneration if it's not mana. And a specialist charged by Lei Shen gains a small percent of health, mana, and damage bonus. Again, this is a relatively low thing, but still just a little bit of a boost.
Oh, too cool. And how quickly are you saying that we can change people that we are empowering?
That I will get to once we get to talking about the E ability, because the trait is directly tied to the E ability, which allows him to actually charge people up.
Oh, Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait for that. Because, I mean, what a great idea. Visually amazing. You know, it brings into the lore of Lei Shen. It brings into the actual gameplay of playing him in Warcraft. It's great. On the assassin build over on my side, I said his trait would be called the work of the gods. This is similar. I mean, it draws a little bit of both of your abilities together, kind of. Lei Shen is driven by power and the thought of finishing the work of the gods. During the World of Warcraft raid, players have to kite the boss to different pillars. Each pillar gives Lei Shen different abilities during the encounter, like we said. In Heroes of the Storm, I wanted to bring the same feel to battling Lei Shen. At the beginning of the game, the Lei Shen player picks one of 3 talents that dictates what type of conduits he can place on the battlefield using D. Each of these 3 conduits he can choose from will buff one of his 3 basic abilities. These can be placed anywhere on the battlefield by Lei Shen and can be destroyed by the enemy, and then they would go on a cooldown. Lei Shen needs to be standing by the placed conduit to gain the buff of the selected attack, and the conduit would have a range that he could be in, and it would be kind of represented like in the raid with lightning traveling from the conduit to the actual tune.
Nice. So
I like
would he...
it.
Oh, sorry. Go for it, Ro.
I was just going to say that really kind of fills the direct fantasy of the Lei Shen fight encounter in a very simple and elegant way, and it also provides a bit of limitation to Lei Shen's ability, and it gives other players a means of disrupting him. Whereas like with mine, I mean, mine's fine. It's really complex, but it also requires other team members to have a lot of knowledge about how Lei Shen's ability works in terms of like which role he's empowering and stuff. This one with the assassin, to me, it feels more along the lines of Blizzard's, motto of simple to learn, easy to master. But no, I like it. It's very elegant.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, to your point about your trait being tough, I think we've seen that Blizzard isn't afraid to go the route of other heroes on the team need to know what you do in order for you to be effective. We've seen that with Medivh, right? You even see that a little bit with Cho'Gall. You see a lot of that in the game. So, I mean, that was my idea for a trait. I can't wait to get into these basic abilities, but before we do, let's start talking about mounts. And I actually watched a few videos that actually take you through the entire encounter up into Lei Shen, and there was a part in there where you actually got to ride a Thunder Ring mount, which is basically like a dinosaur, like a giant thunder dino. And I thought, yeah, Lei Shen would need to ride a giant thunder dino, so that's my choice for a mount. Kristen, what were you thinking for Lei Shen's mount?
I'm thinking we're going to keep it pretty visually obvious, and he gets his own little thundercloud. Now, no promise that he'll sing the Winnie the Pooh, I'm just a little black rain cloud, but there's a chance.
A definite chance. Oh, in his voice, like that voice we heard in
I'm just a little black rain cloud. Hovering over the Nexus.
The Nexus. Perfect. Well done. Rho, what were you thinking for his mount?
Well, we all chose a different one. Mine also takes inspiration from the Throne of Thunder raid and from Mists of Pandaria in general. One of the bosses in the Throne of Thunder raid is known as the Iron Khan, and the Khan rides 3 different mounts that are all called Keelan. They're these kind of like canine leonine creatures that are native to Pandaria. There are 3 variations of Keelan: organic stone and adorned stone. I would think for Lei Shen's Keelan, or Quillen, however you pronounce it, his would be one that is made of stone and also very likely charged with lightning and thunder, so you see kind of the lightning crackling effects surrounding the mount.
Too cool. And I saw those mounts when I was watching too, or those tunes in the game, I should say. And they're very neat and definitely Lei Shen worthy. Oh, okay. Let's get into the basic abilities, not spending too much time on the mounts, because I need to know, Rho, what is your cue for the specialist Lei Shen?
So my Q is actually one that I think could work in almost any role. It's a very basic ability, but it also kind of deals with having people move out of the way of stuff, and it's Lightning Whip. Based on one of his abilities from the raid encounter, Lei Shen cracks a lightning whip on the floor, dealing damage to enemies in front of him and creating a lightning bolt pattern on the ground. Enemies that stand on the lightning bolt pattern take damage over time. So it'd be kind of a conal attack, and then after that you see this lightning bolt pattern like a lightning strike in front of him. It's basically a void zone type area. You don't want to stand in there or else you're going to take damage. And then later talents for that ability could either reduce the cost of the ability, make the lightning bolt larger, maybe add a small chance for a stun effect to anyone that enters that bolt area after its place, or maybe lengthen the time that that void zone stays on the ground. There's a lot of ways that you could talent it and focus on a lightning whip build.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to have a great minds moment later for sure, because the lightning whip in the game, it just looks so cool. I mean, it's like this bare tree kind of lightning that sticks on the ground. And I thought it was cool in some of the raid descriptions. They talked about how you can actually jump over it and it won't damage you, which is a cool thing to have inside of World of Warcraft, to be able to do that. I mean, Kristen, did you get a chance to see the lightning whip in there?
I did, and I think my favorite part was that you get the cloud cover on the ground in the direction it's going to go. Now, my question is, what's the basic size of this attack?
It's not, I mean, at its basic form, it wouldn't be like super long range, so this is kind of like a melee to somewhat mid-range attack. I would say... I'm trying to think of an ability to compare it to in Heroes of the Storm. It's kind of difficult. I would say it's no more than a few yards. It's just kind of a basic conal attack. It wouldn't be that large unless, like, say you were the talent into it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so distance was so like a Vala multi-shot or more like the Stitches slam?
The Stitches slam is actually, I'd say it's just a little larger than a Stitches slam.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's
Stitches
a good
slam.
comparison.
Yeah, that's the kind of gesture too. I mean, just like throwing that down and the lightning tree comes up on the ground. I keep calling it a tree because that's what it looks like. I mean, it looks like
all the branches and stuff. Yeah.
Well, there we go.
The branches on the ground, and I mean, you do not want to step into that. My cue over on the assassin I called decapitate, which is actually an ability that he has in the raid, and I thought it was one of the coolest abilities in the raid, and there's nothing like this in Heroes of the Storm right now, so why not bring it in? It shows Lei Shen's raw power and makes the encounter super challenging in World of Warcraft. When this is activated, in my mind, Lei Shen smashes down on an enemy hero. They take a small amount of initial damage, and they gain a debuff called Decapitate. After having this debuff for a few seconds, the player will take a large amount of damage in the form of lightning. The only catch is that the further that they are away from Lei Shen, the Lei Shen player, the less damage they take. So I'm imagining that if you get hit with Decapitate, you get some sort of on-screen cue that you've been debuffed with this, and you gotta get out of the way so you don't take fatal damage. And I didn't give Lei Shen an escape for that reason, because I figured this would be a form of escape.
It definitely would, because it would totally push somebody out of position, especially if you hit somebody who's low on health and does run the risk of dying immediately once it goes off.
Yeah, and I was thinking
absolutely.
that you could use it to...
Because...
Go ahead, bro.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, it's interesting because it feels like regardless of his role, we're seeing all of us are playing into abilities that really are forcing the enemies to decide how they position themselves. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and imagine you can use it to chase somebody down too, right? You slam, you're almost dead, right? They start hitting you, and then you hit them with a decapitate, and they've got this debuff on them, and they're almost dead too, so they're trying to get away from you, but you're just chasing them down. I mean, it's definitely got that same feel as, a Zeratul with his damage over time, where you just hit him and let him go, or Lunara's damage over time, or hopefully when Gul'dan comes in there'll be some sort of damage over time, because I mean It doesn't feel good to die from damage over time, but it sure does feel good to get an enemy hero with damage over time, right, Kristen?
It does. It's that passive thing. You think they got away and you shucks yourself, and then, oh no, there's the ding of success. Like, yes.
This is completely off topic, but I did watch this one Korean Heroes esports tournament once, and they were fighting, and both cores were going down, and they had a team fight around the enemy core, and everyone died, and the core got down to 2%, and Tyrael was on the core, and Tyrael blew up, and it blew up the core, and everybody went crazy. I mean, that is the same kind of feel where it's just like, game's not over yet, and it was called Tyrael Trait for the Win. Look for that on YouTube, because it's really fun.
I need to check that out now.
Yeah, it's great. Kristen, what were you thinking for his Q ability?
I'm doing one, and we're doing the similar thing with the damage lessened. So this one is called Thunderstruck. Lei Shen chucks an axe at a target enemy hero, dealing a large amount of damage, as well as a splash slow in a wide range around the center. However, the further away the other enemies are from this center, the shorter the slow lasts.
Ooh, I see. Okay, so it's the same type of, positioning kind of game that you got to play if you're playing against Lei Shen.
Exactly. And that was one thing that watching the raid videos really spoke highly of, that I think we're all really working with, is keeping the enemy team moving, always repositioning, always being on top of where they are should something happen. And personally, as a tank, I enjoy having slows. I really enjoy having stuns. So if I had something that could affect an enemy team that likes to group up together, especially on maps where you're forced into smaller positions like Garden of Terror or Sky Temple. There are just those little channels. Ooh, feels so good.
Oh,
now,
absolutely.
when I was thinking of abilities for Lei Shen to use, I was considering Thunderstruck, and I ended up shying away from it because in the raid, Thunderstruck was targeted a random area. Now, for your version of Thunderstruck, Kristen, would you have it be a targeted area so you have control over where the Thunderstruck circle would be?
It would be targeted, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. And I love that. And I mean, Rho, you really said it at the beginning about this encounter. It's all about being in the right position, being in the right place. And I think we're hitting the nail on the head with that. Let's move on to the W's, because I really want to hear the W's. So, Kristen, fill us in. What is your W?
Just doing a little something called Lightning Ball. Lei Shen can target an enemy hero, causing a lightning ball to summon at their feet. The hero that was targeted now suffers from pulse damage that happens every few seconds, interrupting their abilities for a period of time. I wanted to bring Chen's barrel into the main bits of fight. And how powerful would it be as a tank to just completely negate somebody's abilities for a brief period of time without needing to go with a silence?
Oh, I'm speechless on that. That is cool. Rho, don't you think that will affect the game? So that would be so crazy, right?
Yeah, I think the big question about an ability like that would be cooldown wise. I really like him having a disruptive ability like that. The key to it would just be trying to figure out what cooldown feels right for something that can be so disruptive in a battle.
Instant is what I was going with, but I understand if Blizzard wants maybe like 14 seconds. So you really have to be careful with what you do there.
Instant. So
absolutely.
Draft Lei Shen, win the game. Just walk around just like, oh, you want to use your ability? Zap, 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 just instantly going around. I like that version. That should be the Heroes of the Storm arcade version. Just play like,
yes.
Who can kill Lei Shen without any abilities? You have to just use basic attacks. Oh, it's great. So cool. But I totally agree with Rho on this. Like, that's super powerful when you're going into, especially a team fight. So you can only have one hero targeted with this at a time, or do you think it doesn't last the full amount of the cooldown, Kristen? What were you thinking?
Ideally, all 5 enemy heroes at the same time, but we can go with one at a time. And then if it's active already on another hero, you have to wait, I guess, until it's off that enemy hero before casting it on another. That would probably be another fair way to make sure it's not too OP.
Sure, yeah,
It can
but
be that's something where it definitely leaves a lot of room for design and talenting, but too, like at its base level, when you first have it level 1, perhaps it can only be used on one enemy, but later talents could allow you to target, a second or perhaps even a third target, maybe reduce the cooldown on it so it does become even more disruptive over time. There are definitely talents that could make just the whole disruptive aspect of your Lei Shen a very viable build.
yeah, it's
Definitely.
pretty awesome. It's I love it, and I love the fact because it feels like fighting a raid boss, not being able to do what you're meant to do because something else is happening. I mean, that feels really cool. My W on the assassin build over here is definitely the Great Minds moment I was talking about earlier. I thought he would have the lightning whip, thinking it was the exact same thing that Rho was talking about, that large area of lightning marks on the battlefield that does damage to everyone that crosses it, and the burn stays on the battlefield for a small amount of time before fading. The idea you had, Rho, about it being talented into so that, maybe it grows while it's on the field or something, or it stays for longer. I mean, I just think there's so much you could do with that, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I would think that a difference between, say, a specialist lightning whip and an assassin lightning whip, I could see like the assassin version of the lightning whip possibly being larger than Stitch's slam ability, or being more potent as far as an AoE do not stand in this kind of thing. If it's going to be geared for an assassin, it should definitely feel deadlier, whereas for the version I have, it's more of a utility thing to kind of like keep people out of your way.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was imagining that it would do some serious damage, especially if you were in its wake when it first hit. If you're down in, maybe not as much damage if you walked over it, but if it hit you, it'd be pretty powerful. Let's move on to E's, because those W's are too good. Let's move on to...
There's one thing, though. We've forgotten my W.
Oh! Go for it. Go for your W, Rho. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's quite all right. Mine's going to take a little bit because, like I said, in my build, Lei Shen's W depends on who he's charging. The E ability is just going to basically be how he charges, but the W is going to be where his toolkit really comes into effect. So if Lei Shen ends up charging a warrior, he has static shock, and that's a melee range attack. So it's very close range. Lei Shen would charge the target with electricity. After a number of seconds, static shock would deal a significant amount of damage, divided evenly amongst all enemies within a certain distance of the target. So basically, it's almost like planting a sticky bomb on somebody, like if you're a Tracer in Overwatch or something like that. However, the way that your opponent can mitigate that damage is to either share the damage with other players, or if you happen to be in lane, you could share the damage with your minions along your line. So that would be a totally viable way to mitigate the damage as well. For powering an assassin, Lei Shen would get Chain Lightning, which is basically a ranged attack, a fairly basic chain lightning attack that we've seen in MMOs and many other similar games that deal X amount of damage, and if there are other enemies nearby, the lightning damage would chain over the others. A fairly standard ranged attack. If Lei Shen was charging a support, he would get an ability called Overcharge, and Overcharge targets one enemy after a number of seconds. Overcharge bursts, dealing X damage and creating this ring of energy, which expands and stuns any nearby enemies. I'm taking this pretty much straight from the raid fight. Yeah. Now, the target itself would not be stunned. The ring that expands around the target would stun other players. So it's one of these abilities where, targeting one person in like a one-on-one isn't really that effective. But boy, could this thing really change the tide of battle in a team fight. It's a fairly, what I would think of as a fairly low damage attack, and it's more focused on the utility and the stun of it. And lastly, if Lei Shen is powering a specialist, he would get Ball Lightning, again, kind of taking a little bit from the raid fight, where he summons this single Ball Lightning ad, which deals chain lightning damage to anything near it, and it does have its own health point pool, so it can be destroyed by enemy players. I kind of see this as something where if you're charging a specialist, you have Lei Shen thinking siege mode, so you'd slap down a Ball Lightning nearby a tower, or you know, something else just to kind of help bring down the tower, or bring down a line of enemy minions and such like that. So it's kind of his assault utility type abilities. So those are all the different abilities that he could deal with depending on who he's charging up.
Okay, how did I miss this? Oh my gosh, this is crazy cool. Crazy cool. I mean, it takes a serious amount of skill level to be able to play your version of Lei Shen, only because I can see exactly what you're saying. Charging that specialist to send that wave out, charging that support to send the wave out, charging the specialist to do, you know, to add the ad. I mean, you just really got to plan out what you're doing. And imagine if your team, Kristen, was on the same page. Wouldn't that be, I mean, just too cool?
That would be incredible. Now, how far away would your fellow heroes, how far away could they be from you? I mean, how close to the thick of the fight would you need to be in order to pull this off?
Well, this is kind of a good segue into the E, so I might as well just start off by finishing this up and talking about the E. So, the E is called simply Charge, and that it would be on a 2-minute cooldown. So that's one of the limitations of this thing, and it provides one of the big tactical decisions during the fight, in that Lei Shen has to choose who he's charging very carefully. Charge empowers an ally and gives Lei Shen a new W ability based on the role of the target on a 2-minute cooldown. So because it's on such a 2-minute cooldown, the range is unlimited. So once he's chosen his target to empower, for those 2 minutes, that's the type of tool set and abilities that he has. You could, of course, talent things later on to allow you to recharge a different opponent, a different ally faster. And also another thing that's kind of important is one of the later level talents, like level 14 or 17, would make the charge far more powerful, allowing the bonus that I talked to you guys about at the very beginning of this to be stronger as well, where the bonus that he gives to the other character, whether it's assassin, warrior, specialist, or support, would do significantly different things, such as an empowered charge could give a support an extra ability called Flash of Lightning, which is essentially an escape blinker teleport. Cool. An empowered charge on a specialist could give Essence of the Storm, or not Essence of the Storm, Crashing Thunder, which is an ability which does a stun and area damage with significant cooldown, so like an extra stun given to the other player. An empowered charge on an assassin could give cooldown reduction on their abilities, and an empowered charge on a warrior could give a chance for enemy heroes that strike that warrior to actually be stunned by the lightning armor already on the warrior. So the charge is, although it's an E ability and most people usually think of E as like the big powerful thing on the long cooldown, this is a super long cooldown, but it's also at the very core of just how this hero works.
Yeah, I love that it's on a long cooldown, because that makes it really important. You know, you can't just be vola-volting around the battlefield. You know, you've got to really be good. And if you got good at it and your team, I mean, again, if your team was on top of it, wouldn't it just be killer? I mean, so awesome.
It would. And quick question. So the range of this charge is unlimited. Does that mean it's global as well?
I would say so. For the charge itself, I'd say that there's a range on the charge, in that he would have to be within a typical line of sight long distance thing to initially charge his ally. But let's say you charge Lily and Lily's 15, 20 yards away, and later on during that 2-minute duration, for some reason, like say you're playing Dragonshire, you're at the bottom, you're at the Sun Shrine, and Lily's all the way at the Moon Shrine. That's fine. Lily still would have her bonus from being charged, and Lei Shen would still have his ability from charging Lily. So for the initial charging, he does need to get within kind of a normal casting range, but once the charge is done, then it doesn't matter where his target is and where Lei Shen is during those 2 minutes.
Oh, nice. I like that. The repositioning ability would be fantastic.
Yeah, the fact that you can be, I mean, really, it's global after that. I mean, she can go and do whatever, and then Lei Shen.
Imagine doing that on a Brightwing. Brightwing teleports to Lei Shen. Lei Shen powers Brightwing, then Brightwing goes off to do her thing.
Oh man, and also it could work the opposite way. Imagine if there was a Brightwing that was on the opposite team, right? And I mean, you could just mess with their whole way of what's going on. I mean, bravo, man. Those two go well. I mean, it all goes super well together, but that W, to go back to the W, it's just seriously cool that you would have to choose, and you would have to be ready for it, and your team would have to be ready for whatever is coming at them based on who you attempt to gain abilities from, you know? I mean, that's just too awesome. My E is not nearly as cool. I'm calling it Lightning Storm. Lei Shen calls down a lightning storm that acts like an instant beam of lightning, dealing damage and stunning a target. This lightning strike can't miss the hero targeted. It's got a very short range and only can be cast on heroes. So similar to Uther Stun, but with much more damage.
It's kind of like a smart sandblast from Chromie.
Yeah, a smart sandblast, because it can only be hit on heroes, and it does a significant amount of damage. So, I mean, I had a game with Chromie, or I was playing against Chromie on Towers of Doom, and I think that is one of her all-star maps, Chromie, because there are some places you can be as Chromie on that dumb map where you can just be like across the way where nobody can get you, and you're just poking at the people that are trying to capture the shrines, and it's crazy. So I thought Lei Shen might play a little bit like that, where, you know, with this lightning storm, you could call it down on people. It's not global by any means, and it doesn't have a super long range like Chromie's attack, but a significant amount of damage, because I am thinking assassin over here. But on Kristen's end, with the tank version, what were you thinking for the E?
Well, this one is directly related to the traits. So there are the 4 quadrants of the map. North, we get static shock. Target enemy is charged with static electricity that causes damage to the target and those around them. And then if we go east, we get something called diffused lightning. At the target point, Lei Shen summons a diffused lightning elemental that begins attacking the closest enemy. Now this one, like Rho's orb of electricity, would have health, could be targeted and taken down.
Cool.
South, we get Overcharge, where the target enemy is filled with electric power that, after a short period of time, explodes outward in a large ring, knocking back all nearby enemies. And then west, we get Bouncing Bolt. Lei Shen calls down a bolt of lightning that randomly bounces its way along the battlefield.
Oh, cool. So, again, I mean, all of these builds, your guys' is more than mine, but they're very high skill cap kind of thing. So in high team skill cap is what I'm trying to say. Like, so you've really got to choose with your team where you're going to be duking it out. And if you are duking it out, you need to know what abilities are going to be going off so that they can play to your advantage, right, Kristen?
Yep, you need probably about 25 people on your team to really make this work, but it's all good.
I would say with that Bouncing Bolt that you mentioned, like in the latter part during Lei Shen's development, once he gets a talent to perhaps power up that ability, one of the cool things about Bouncing Bolt in the raid fight is that if you did not purposefully let yourself get hit by the Bouncing Bolt, it would spawn an ad. So I would think maybe not the start that the Bouncing Bolt could do that, but imagine if the Bouncing Bolt was able to do that at, like, say, level 17 or level 20, where now you are basically forcing your team, you better absorb this Bouncing Bolt, otherwise you're going to be swarmed by additional lightning minion ads going after your towers.
that would be incredible. And I would imagine too, these little guys, they would be little miniature versions. They wouldn't be big old hulking masses, just little guys, because they're there to be annoying more so than actually do damage.
Oh yeah. And so I'm also thinking with Kristen's ability, what if you could talent into, or what if at the beginning of the game you could select which abilities were in which quadrants? So So like at the very beginning, the Lei Shen player says, "Team, what quadrant do you think we feel most comfortable using the bouncing bolt in?" Or whatever it is, and then you get to pick which quadrants are north, south, east, and west, or whatever. Or maybe you get to level 13, and that's where you can change the quadrants to throw off the enemy team. I mean, there's just so much cool stuff. I love that. I think it's so cool.
Really important on certain maps, especially on a map like, say, Dragonshire or Towers of Doom, where, you know, having certain abilities in different areas of the map could really mean all the difference in the world.
Definitely. And imagine too, if the map is split in half. So Dragonshire, for instance, you could have your Lei Shen jumping back and forth between 2 quadrants.
Oh,
if you could shift the axis, I guess.
I see what you're saying, though. I mean, moving team fights to where you want them to be. I mean, it's too cool. These basics are just awesome. I mean, they definitely do the classes that we chose, or the role specific classes we chose, justice. I think they all, you know, basically do it justice. For the assassin on my end, Kristen's build with the tank, and then Rho's build with the specialist. I mean, that specialist build is just awesome. Before we get on to
it's pretty crazy.
It's crazy awesome, man. That's what we're all about on HeroesForge. Crazy stuff. I mean, that would take some serious practice, and I love heroes like that. I want to pick up Medivh. I want to get into Chromie. I want to find somebody to play Cho'Gall with, just to dominate, because those are hard and they take practice, and that Lei Shen is killer. It's too cool. And I bet it's going to get even more cool with the heroics. But before we get to those heroics, I was going to say, let's thank our patrons over at patreon.com/HeroesForge. Over there, you can support the show, and you can help us reach our goals so that we can be bringing you more episodes. We want to do battleground forging. We want to let the community pick which heroes will be forged every week. If you're interested in supporting the show, head on over there and check it out. Also, if you listen to us on iTunes and you'd like to drop us a 5-star rating, it really helps the show grow. Head on over to iTunes and make sure you leave us a little note with your rating, and we'll give you a shout out on the show. And now I need to know what these heroics are. So let's forge the heroics.
Heroic.
I'm going to start this one because we've talked about it already, and as we were saying it, I was holding my tongue thinking, oh, I want to say my heroic so bad. So my first heroic ability is called Bouncing Bolts. Lei Shen launches 3 slow-moving blue clouds in the air that are traveling to a marked section on the battlefield. Enemy heroes must get into the zone and take the damage from the clouds to prevent them from turning into adds that will stay on the battlefield until they are destroyed by the enemy. Another repositioning feel for Lei Shen in my mind. I mean, Kristen, great minds, right?
Great minds think alike. Now, your adds, would they be bigger because they're part of the heroic, or would they be tiny little ankle biters?
I think they would probably be tiny little ankle biters, only because I want the damage to be a significant thing, or I want the people that are going into these marked areas on the battlefield to have to think about it. Like, can I take that damage? Can I take enough damage and I won't die? Or am I going to have to sacrifice myself? You know, is it not going to be worth it just for this little ad that's going to, you know, come out? But not too weak. I mean, I don't know, not as strong as mercenaries, I guess I would say, but, you know, pretty strong to where you would have to really think about whether you were going to do it or not. And Rho, is that ever an option in the raid? Because, I mean, you basically have multiple healers that are healing people, so you have to take these bouncing bolts out, right?
Yeah, it's the thing is, if you let Bouncing Bolt go without absorbing the hit for it, it would continue to bounce, and each bounce would summon another minion. And if you let it go for too long, you could get overwhelmed by the number of adds that are attacking you.
Okay, now, are these ads that spawn, are they elites?
Yeah, during the raid encounter, yeah. I mean, they take a little while to bring down. I wouldn't say they have a ton of HP. If you have, a couple people focus on them, they'd go down in like about 5 or 10 seconds. But during the raid encounter, of course, that's time spent damaging that and not damaging other more important things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
And I think that, it would make heroes feel a little more like a raid if something like that was in it, because the healers would be responsible to, if Lei Shen was to take this bouncing bolts, they'd have to stay in the back to heal the people that were gonna, take this damage. Not all the healers always stay in the back, but, stuff like that, which I think would feel really cool. And I love the bouncing bolts. I think that's the coolest part of the raid, that you have to choose to take that damage in order to save your team, and the healer's got to heal you up. It's a cool effect. Rho, what were you thinking for his first heroic ability?
For his first heroic ability, taking something from the raid encounter near the end of it, it's an ability called Violent Gale Winds. So after a windup of about 3/4 of a second to a second, Lei Shen would channel this wind between himself and the area that you target, and anything caught between Lei Shen and wherever you targeted would be pushed away from Lei Shen for 4 seconds. Now, at level 10, it's basically just a single directional kind of Mighty Gust kind of thing that's not adding a slow ability at all. So one of the things to differentiate this from Falstad's Mighty Gust is there's no slow thing, but it is a strong wind push that's basically meant to kind of disrupt the flow of battle. Now, at level 20, the heroic improvement for the talent would add a thunderclap to Violent Gale Winds, which would have anyone caught in that line when the Violent Gale Winds is cast to be put on a 1.5 second stun. So they'd be stunned and pushed away and basically helpless to do much of anything for that. Just a second or two, but still a very important window of time to try to do something.
Oh, too cool, right, Kristen?
Stuns, man. I love it. It's sickening. I would hate to get caught in that. But also, would you perchance think of adding something where if you blew them into terrain that you can't go around, you're just pushed into a wall or something, that it does damage to them? Because the pressure from the wind is so strong.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be totally something that you could add to it. And adding damage to this ability wouldn't be a bad idea either. Basically, when I thought of this ability, I'm like, okay, I want to do a wind-blowing ability that simulates what he did in the raid encounter, but I don't want people to say, oh, hey, it's Mighty Gust, the sequel. So I want to make sure that it just feels as different from Mighty Gust as possible. So adding a damage element into that could work as well.
Yeah, very, very cool. I love that. When you watch the raid encounters, if you haven't watched them, go and watch them now because they're great. But the gusts that push people off and just the rage that comes off, because you can kind of control where you're standing so that you don't get gusted off of this platform and ruin, because you can't get rezzed, right, Rho, if you get gusted off?
Yeah, if you get blown off the platform, there's no coming back from that.
There's no coming back from your raid. I mean, if it's a healer, if it's DPS, if it's, heaven forbid, your tank, you're done. I mean, you got to restart.
Oh, yeah. Wipe it up.
So the videos are really great. I mean, watching people, and, it's kind of funny because some people are like, I'm so sorry. They like fly off the edge. It's a great ability, and you'd have to bring it into Heroes of the Storm. Kristen, what were you thinking for your heroic?
I was going with overloaded circuits because I love the pillars in the middle. So the pillars would rise up from the ground, and after grabbing hold to each one, Lei Shen powers up the 4 corners of the map in a fury of thunder and lightning. At this point, all conduits are active at all corners of the map, attacking everything at once for as long as Lei Shen can keep hold. And this is on a timer, so it's not like he just hold on as long as he was protected.
Unlimited power!
Nice.
Oh, too cool. So while he's channeling it, is he able to be attacked?
He can be attacked, yes. I think he's targetable. He can be killed, very much like Sylvanas when she has mind control. If you get to her, you can take her down.
Right. So
yeah, so for your teammates, it'd be important for your teammates if you're in a team fight situation to have your team fights positioned so that they can provide cover from Lei Shen so that he doesn't get disrupted or interrupted while channeling that.
Definitely.
Oh, okay. That was my next question. So he can get interrupted from this ability, from channeling it.
Yeah, I want it to be so super awesome that it would be priority number 1 to stop him from doing this.
Yeah. I love those priority number 1 abilities in the game, you know, where you look at it and you just think, you know, I got to take out Nazebo at this moment, or, you know, the, what's it called? Ravaging.
Gargantuan?
Or
both
the
of those.
Gargantuan.
Or the Ravenous
Yeah.
Spirit, yeah.
Both, yeah. But yeah, you see what I'm saying. There are those moments where I love that. It makes the game feel different. It makes it feel really good. I really like that. Okay, Kristen, hit us with your second heroic ability.
Okay, second one. I really liked the idea of the Helm of Command. So connecting with an enemy through a mental beam of light, Lei Shen exerts his will, pushing the target player back while dealing heavy damage. If they are pushed off the map, and I assume we're near an edge of the map and you can push them through the terrain, they immediately die. And Lei Shen can move while this is active, altering the direction the beam pushes the target.
Oh, original and deadly. I mean, you'd have to really, I mean, you'd want Lei Shen on top lane or bottom lane, right?
Yeah, definitely, especially if he takes this one, you definitely want to make sure your engages are top bottom.
Yeah,
It feels like a very improved version of what Sylvanas' current heroic allows her to do. I like this one a lot better.
Yeah, it's cool that you can change the direction and you can move, kind of just like moving the people around. I mean, that's cool. So does it last for about the same length, are you thinking?
Same length as
mind control, Sylvanas's, or maybe even like a grab and pull from Dahaka, or are you thinking it's lasting longer because it's heroic?
That's interesting. I think base, it should probably last maybe a little bit longer than mind control, so you have the chance a bit more to reposition yourself if they start to run. But I like the idea of talenting into it so you could maybe you move faster or it lasts longer.
Yeah. It's cool. It can go anywhere. I mean, that's really cool. And I love the fact that you're talking about the pillars, because that's what my second heroic ability is. I call it Stage 2. When this is activated, Lei Shen pulls up 2 massive lightning pillars from the ground that channel all of his abilities. For a short amount of time, he is immune and not able to move. These pillars charge Lei Shen and give him a buff for all of his basic abilities for a short amount of time. Similar to if he was able to select all the 3 pillars at the beginning of the game with his trait on my end. So he's basically, if you take this heroic, he's going to become... I just want him to have this moment like he has in the raid where he becomes immune, reaches down into the battlefield, pulls out these massive lightning pillars and just screams or something. Maybe something crazy, screams like "the work for the gods" or something like that. And he just gets infused with lightning, and after it happens for a short amount of time, he's basically got all of his basic abilities buffed.
I like it.
Yeah.
Enough
that
said.
That was scary.
It's scary, and it'd be cool to bring into a team fight. It'd be fun to, just go crazy and, start throwing down those lightning whips and lightning storms and decapitates all over the place, and people are running away from you and you're just screaming.
So would you be bigger? Would you grow kind of like into a boss size?
Absolutely. Let's make him grow. Let's make him have lightning like whipping off of his body and, smoky lightning coming out of his eyes or whatever, just like the raid. I mean, I want it to be a really cool moment.
Visually, it kind of reminds me of Murden going Avatar mode, except on a far cooler scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lei Shen would get super lightning charged and twice as big, and Lei Shen's already a very tall, imposing figure to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it would be pretty scary and cool. But I mean, he wouldn't gain any health from this, so he would just be stronger. So you'd still have to play him like an assassin. You couldn't just charge straight. Well, you could. Maybe you would die, or maybe you'd get some kills, or have somebody that you was trying to run away from you and you kill them anyway with decapitate debuff. But that was my thought on my second heroic. Rho, I think we probably saved the best for last. What is your second heroic ability?
You know, the funny thing is, I think mine's actually kind of the calmer one of the three second heroics. And I actually went with a name that doesn't borrow anything from his previous ability, but previous raid stuff, but it kind of does something similar. So his second heroic is called Storm Surge, and it summons a ball lightning fixated on each enemy hero. So basically you have 5 enemies up on the enemy team. There'd be a ball lightning summoned right next to each enemy hero, regardless of where they are in the field. These ball lightnings are kind of like the ball lightning I mentioned earlier on, except I would imagine each of them would have a bit less HP. And each of these ball lightnings deal more damage the closer they are to one another. So this is a very team fight oriented heroic. If you are able to get the enemy team in a team fight, and Lei Shen uses Storm Surge, and you have these 5 ball lightnings that appear and dealing damage to enemy players, not only is that extra damage going on to the enemy team, but because the ball lightnings are next to each other, they're charging each other up and doing even more damage. Now, these ball lightnings have HP, so they can be killed. You want to kill them quickly so that you're mitigating that damage and not taking that damage. But it could be devastating in a team fight scenario, and once you hit level 10, the other team would definitely have to be careful. If they see that Lei Shen has chosen Storm Surge, not to get into a position where they're grouped up together, which can be very tricky if Lei Shen also decides to use abilities that require them to group up.
Right. And I mean, but you feel that in the raid, right? Because there are a few abilities in the raid where you have to group, and then everybody has to spread out, and one person has to run away, and you have to double tank it. I mean, I love this.
Yeah. So how far away would you have to be from your fellow teammates in order not to get that extra bit of damage?
So it's something where I feel that, like, if a ball lightning is within map vision of another ball lightning, then each of them should be charged up. So, like, let's say you're doing Dragonshire and you have 2 up in Sun and 3 down in Moon, then the 2 that are summoned up where the 2 are will be buffing each other a little bit in damage. It wouldn't be like a big damage buff. It may basically mean like each of them do 10% more damage, where down below each of them, since there's 3 ball lightnings, maybe each ball lightning does 20% more damage, but that's 3 doing 20% more compared to 2 doing 10% more. So it's kind of an exponential thing. So it's really an ability that shines the most when you have all 5 grouped up together. So if you're in a team fight situation and all 5 ball lightnings are basically within vision of one another, that would mean like all 5 ball lightnings do 50% more damage each, which means like an extra 250% more damage total going on to the enemy team.
And in that point, I guess you're hoping you have an awesome ETC that can land a 5 enemy mosh pit, cast the balls, and they die.
Oh, can you
Wombo
imagine?
combo potential indeed.
Ooh,
Oh, and then throw a ring of frost on top of that, or like a disintegrate.
You want to make sure they're dead.
I love it. And then as long as the death animation involves like the ragdoll corpses just flying up in the air, and I mean, some of the funniest moments are when Jaina goes flying across your screen after she gets taken out. I love that. I think that's so funny. Oh, Rho, really though, that's a really cool idea. And again, I think a through line through all of these builds that we've had is positioning. And what says raid more than positioning, and what says Lei Shen more than positioning, lightning, and craziness? And I think we did that. And speaking of crazy, let's talk about specialty skins, the craziest part of the show. If this hero was in Heroes of the Storm and they had a crazy skin that was off the wall, what would it be? And I'll start this one. I think, okay, if you look at a picture of Lei Shen, and if you don't know what Lei Shen looks like, go Google Lei Shen and look at a picture of him. I cannot help but see Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean, like with these tentacles coming off of his chin, right? So I think he would have a Davy Jones skin, and he would just be like this pirate that's an underwater pirate, you know, barnacles everywhere. Maybe the lightning whip is actually, because there's a whip in that movie too, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean. So maybe he has some sort of like seaweed whip that leaves like this green goop on the floor instead. And then the lightning storm would call down lightning still, because there's still, you know, all that storms and stuff in Pirates. I just can't help but see Davy Jones.
Ads could be undead pirates.
Yes.
Instead of lightning elementals.
What
And
is
he'd
it
have a
about
little
pirates?
monkey on his shoulder.
Yes.
Absolutely. What is it about pirates that is so cool, Kristen? I think pirates are so awesome.
I think the way we've romanticized
Yeah.
what their actual lives were probably is what makes them cool. I mean, if I were to go back, I don't think I'd choose to be a pirate.
No way. No way. Ro, what were you thinking for specialty skin for Lei Shen?
Well, this is kind of interesting because I wanted to choose something that was fitting with stuff that's already been kind of done with specialty skins. One of the interesting things is Chen Stormstout and Lily Stormstout both have specialty skins which are tied to Lei Shen, if you do a little checking on that, which is kind of cool. But for Lei Shen's alternate skin, I'm going to a different part of the alternate history stuff going on. Now, if you've looked at alternate skins, you know that we have Mecha Dahaka, we have Mecha Tassadar, we also have Mecha Nubarak, and we have, of course, Kaijo Diablo. And these are all four characters that are part of a shared alternate timeline where Kaijo Diablo is fighting against these mecha versions of these heroes.
Yeah, too cool.
Now, the thing here, guys, is Kaijo Diablo's being outnumbered 3-1. I think Kaijo Diablo needs a little help, so I have Kaijo Shen. Now, Kaijo Shen's background would be this. Stormstout Industries head researcher Lei Shen was transformed into this Kaijo after studying RA-D3N, which if you sound it out says Rodden. RA-D3N, a meteorite of unknown origin whose extraterrestrial properties could have powered a fleet of mecha for decades. Little did Shen know that none of their protective measures would prevent him from exposure to the rock's radiation. So the rock's radiation turns him into this monstrous lizard-like version of Lei Shen, and so he's kind of like this I'd see him as this like towering humanoid thunder lizard that would join Kaijo Diablo in fighting against the mecha.
Would he have a tail?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
I don't even know what to say. That's so well thought out. That's so cool. I mean, Davy Jones over here.
I do my research, dang it.
Yes. Now, would he still use lightning?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, you see, whereas kind of like with Lei Shen, it's more of like a magical, mystical thing. With Kaijo Shen, it's more almost like a biological lightning thing. Now, maybe Kaijo Shen's lightning would be like a weird color, you know, like maybe green or red lightning, something that differentiates itself from Lei Shen's normal lightning. So like green or red lightning, something like that would be pretty cool.
Oh, just killer. That is such... I want that. Like, I want that so bad. That'd be so cool. Oh, Kristen, what were you thinking for a specialty skin?
I'm so amused. We've all taken such different routes to getting to these skins. Jeff, it was visual. Rho, it was lore. And this one, I went with history. Like, when I was reading about Lei Shen, I couldn't help but picture Genghis Khan. So I wanted Genghis Khan skin, and we could call it Genghis Shen. And he would be dressed in some nice Mongolian armor and everything, and his mount would have to be a horse. And I tried to work in the archery, but it just wouldn't fit. So we'd have to drop the archery, sadly.
No, but that's such a great idea. I want all these skins. Like, this should be the bundle. when Lei Shen gets released. And you should be able to get all 3 of these builds too. Like, you choose. Do you want the Lei Shen assassin build? Do you want the Lei Shen tank, or do you want the awesome Lei Shen specialist build?
Could you imagine though if they released a hero where you literally could choose what type of hero it was?
Oh, they should do that. I mean, that would be crazy weird, and the people would probably find the best version of the hero, and they'd have to take a whole crap load of time tweaking all the heroes to make them similar, and Lei Shen probably isn't the best hero for that, and I bet there's some sort of chameleon type character in some of these Blizzard games that would be awesome for that. Like, I think of Karazim instantly for something like that, and talk about a money-making machine, right? Oh, I need all 3 Lei Shens, you know?
Yeah, I think just the one thing when I was creating my version of Lei Shen is when I was thinking about the pillars and stuff like that, I was thinking about, okay, what defines a specialist? And different specialists do things very differently. Like, each specialist kind of has their own take on how they bend the game in a very different way. And whether it ends up being Lei Shen or some other hero, I want to see a hero in the Nexus whose abilities and toolkit and makeup depends on the roles that he is teaming up with and associating with, kind of forming this kind of symbiotic bond with a different role, so that the roles that you're associating with have an impact on your character's play itself. I think it's one of just a number of ways that we can bring something new to the whole specialist thing that we haven't seen before.
I mean, that is a fantastic idea that I had never even thought of before. Kristen, don't you agree?
Yes, and it would be such a great way, too, to complement your team no matter what your team is made up of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just so cool. And, you know, with these builds, we've had some, I mean, the through lines, like we talked about before, positioning of both teams is a really big part of all of our builds. You know, dealing some serious damage, the lightning theme through all of our builds is so cool. And I think we had a ton of great mind moments that make these 3 completely different builds true to Lei Shen and true to the raid. And just, I mean, with that, we definitely have to say that Lei Shen has been forged. Just outstanding builds, you guys. I mean, this is one of the best episodes we've had with just great ideas. That's why it ran so long, because we are just really full of ideas for this character, which we're all passionate about, clearly. And I mean, I became passionate about this character in the last, 5 days, 6 days. It's just too cool. So make sure you check out videos of Lei Shen online, and I hope you have as much fun as I did watching them. Rho, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you and Realm Maintenance in the interwebs?
Sure. First off, thank you both for having me on. I really appreciate it. This is one of my favorite Heroes of the Storm podcasts, and it's a blast to be a part of it for an episode. You can find me on Twitter at RhoWow, that's spelled RHOWOW. My show, Realm Maintenance, can also be found on Twitter at Realm Podcast. And if you want to go to the site for the show itself, all you have to do is go to realm-maintenance.com. You can also find Realm Maintenance on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all the usual places. Your podcast app of choice should find it pretty easily.
Very cool. And thank you for joining us on the episode. I mean, it's too cool to have a community that's this supportive of all the different podcasts, and your show definitely takes it to a whole different level, and we appreciate you and your show more than you will ever know. So thank you for all of that, and listen to Realm Maintenance and spread the love to all those other Blizzard podcasts out there, because they're all just like us, trying to be passionate about what they love and just doing all that they can to be a part of the Blizzard community. Speaking of, Kristen, where can people find you around the interwebs and the community?
Well, they can find me at Dream Destroyer, that is DRMDESTRYR, over at Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and of course my health and fitness blog, battletobebetter.weebly.com.
Battle to be better. Everybody check that out too, because it is totally sweet. If you're looking for me, I'm here on HeroesForge. HeroesForge has a website. You can check it out. It's heroesforge.club. Over on the website, Kristen has built this really awesome UI over there where you can check out all of our previous episodes. This is episode 26, so we have 25 awesome episodes over there to check out, and that's on the Forged Heroes tab at the top of heroesforge.club. Make sure that you check out our Twitter, which is at Forge Heroes. Like us on YouTube, which is youtube.com/HeroesForge. If you download the show on iTunes and you enjoy it, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and leave us a little note so we can give you a shout out on the show. We record live every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/HeroesForge. Oh, nope. Sorry, it's twitch.tv/Amove TV, because we are part of the Amove TV network, and we're a proud partner there. They have some awesome podcasts over there. Check them out at amove.tv and listen to the latest episodes of Into the Nexus if you're into Heroes of the Storm, because those episodes they've just been really great and informative over there, and it's a great news and strategy podcast.
I hear that Kyle guy knows his stuff.
It's rumored. It's rumored. We hear things on the wind, but there's no confirmation. No yes or no.
No, I'll give you a yes. He knows his stuff. And I'll tell you what, I've taken a few coaching lessons from Kyle, and he taught me so much about the game. So listen to Into the Nexus. That's your first start into, that's the gateway into all of the great Heroes knowledge that's over there. And there are other awesome Heroes podcasts out there that we want to plug to. So listen to everything you can, absorb all the knowledge. And if you'd like to support this show, you can support us on patreon.com/HeroesForge. Rho, thank you again for joining us, and I hope that we can have you on a future episode too.
It's my pleasure, and I would love to join you guys sometime down the line to forge another hero.
Outstanding. Well, we're going to call it there. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and we'll see you in the real world.